Tēnā tātou katoa, good evening. Israel says it will do anything to free the 100 or so hostages taken in an attack by Palestinian Hamas fighters. And by anything, it means going even further than the promise it's already made to deliver a mighty vengeance. The combined number of Palestinian and Israeli dead has already passed 1,000. Among the horrors, the taking of hostages from a music festival where at least 260 Israelis were massacred. Europe correspondent Lisa Raymer reports.
Revenge was served up loud and deadly today, and followed by a chilling silence. Israel hammered Gaza with airstrikes, formally declaring war on Hamas and matching its words with missiles.
Hamas was more barbaric and more brutal than ISIS. Let me be crystal clear. Israel will respond with determination and force.
It is a commitment laden in blood. Several Israelis were reportedly killed during this shootout near the Gaza border, soldiers firing over car bonnets as motorists ducked for cover. Military might prowls the highways heading south, but the roads carry more than just the threat of what's to come. Bodies of Hamas militants left on the Tahsil where they fell, the graphic reality of the brutal battles already fought. Saturday's dawn assault has triggered a seemingly endless volley of attacks.
This building, 80 families lived here. You're talking about a whole neighbourhood.
Gaza is one of the most densely populated places in the world, and outside this local hospital, a crowd quickly surrounds an injured man. He holds the body of his young child, killed when an airstrike hit his home. The anguish is harrowing, and it's being felt on both sides. This father, also in agony, a wreck with worry that he too will soon be burying his child. His daughter, 25-year-old Noah, was filmed pleading for help as she was carried away from a music festival on Saturday. She is one of the more than 100 people feared kidnapped by Hamas militants, and Israel medics say at least 260 bodies have now been found at the site of the festival. Her best friend left fighting against fading hope.
I think you know what I'm fearing, that she's been hurt. I don't even want to imagine what they're doing to her.
The concern is contagious. Ordinary civilians are now obsessively checking in on each other, fearing the worst will hit them next.
Just making sure that everyone I love is okay about 30 times a day.
Kiwi Maya Netza moved to Israel 7 years ago and says the level of terror is unprecedented.
Just really, really anxious and terrified and kind of not knowing what's going on and how safe we actually are, and seeing just a lot of horrifying videos and pictures coming out from people in the south. It's been really, really, really scary.
Her family, who still live in Auckland, have been in constant contact.
I don't think anyone's been sleeping much.
Certainly not here, where the skies are awake at all hours.
Kia ora, Lisette. What more do we know about the fate of those hostages?
Yeah, well, obviously there are grave concerns for those hostages. At the moment, it's proving difficult just to get the most basic information. How many are there and who are they? We know that there are women, children as young as 3 years old, and members of the elderly community among them. The Hamas leaders have claimed that they have captured enough Israeli soldiers to be able to force the Israeli authorities to release every single Palestinian prisoner. For his part, the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed mighty vengeance, but the fate of those hostages now incredibly complicates his ability to deliver on that promise. And it is suspected that Hamas is very aware of that fact. It is thought that they are now using the hostages as a sort of human shield, spreading them out across Gaza so that any attack by Israel would then risk harming one of their own. And with the death toll rising, as you mentioned earlier, over 7 700 Israelis now killed, over 400 Palestinians killed. The human cost is already far too great.
Europe correspondent Lisa Raymer, tēnā koe.
Western leaders are condemning the actions of Hamas, while the US is taking things a step further. It's sending its most advanced war carrier closer to Israel.
On board of 5,000 sailors and a fleet of warplanes ready to assist if needed. US correspondent Mitch McCann reports.
What the is this? Shame on them! Shame on them! Shame on all the terrorists!
New York City has the largest Jewish population outside of Israel, and ours after their spiritual homeland was attacked. Pro-Palestinian protesters descended on Times Square, a move already labelled abhorrent and morally repugnant by the governor.
I'm a strong believer that the people across the street are supporting terrorism.
This huge crowd here across the street are all here celebrating the murder of over 600 Israelis.
Protests are taking place across the world, and for much of the day this one was on the move, marching through Manhattan.
Well, the protesters are chanting "Free, Free Palestine," and it's a protest that New York officials did not want to happen today. They didn't want any tensions to be inflamed.
Almost 300 Palestinians have been killed this year alone in the past 9 months, and no outrage has happened, and this is what happens when people are oppressed.
The demonstration took place a short distance from an emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council. Israel's ambassador emerged from the meeting with an iPad to illustrate the atrocities before comparing the attacks to ones on this city 22 years ago.
This is Israel's 9/11. This is Israel's 9/11.
Americans are believed to have been killed in the Hamas attack, and today Washington stepped up its response. The US Navy's newest aircraft carrier will sail towards Israel, armed with warplanes.
President Biden's direction was to make sure that we're providing Israel everything it needs in this moment to deal with the attacks from Hamas.
Elsewhere, global leaders joined the chorus of condemnation over the weekend's attacks.
This is indiscriminate. Civilians being targeted, killed and murdered.
We will do everything that we can to help. Terrorism will not prevail.
Itself at war, billboards in Ukraine's capital were illuminated with the Israeli flag. President Zelensky, having spoken with Israel's Prime Minister, offered his condolences too. Back in New York, demonstrations threatened to spill over as the day wore on. A sign perhaps how far the conflict is stretching. In New York, Mitch McCann, News Hub.